Hello, Ryan here, and welcome to Star Citizen Sunday. This is a weekly show which covers all of the news from the week just past. Be sure to subscribe if you like what you see, and let's get on with it. This week, Invictus Launch Week is now in full swing. Alpha 3.23.1 has released to the live servers, plus we get the lowdown on all things ships and vehicles. So this week's Inside Star Citizen was in celebration of Invictus Launch Week. This is a part 1. Next Thursday will be part 2. But this episode, they were taking a look at the gold standard Saber Raven, its new variant, the Saber Firebird, and the new Ursa Medevac, or NERSA, as the community seem to have dubbed it, which is perfect. So starting with the Saber Raven, this is quite an exclusive ship, as it was part of an exclusive deal with Intel, and it is an EMP interdictor fighter, with 2 EMPs under its belly, and it has an additional computer on board to help with data running too. And it just looks cool. Now, they have just done the gold standard pass for the Saber Raven, which includes the new weapon storage location and functional component base, so it is now ready for the resource network. They have also worked on the ship's dashboard, which is now interactable as well. And as an owner, I am very happy to see this ship get gold standardized, as it's not a ship that I often bring out due to how outdated it is, and hopefully this will give me a little bit more reason to fly it. Now, as mentioned, there is a new Saber called the Firebird, which, similarly to the Talon, is a missile-based fighter, so trading gunfire for missile firepower. And this ship holds 12 Size 3 missiles. Now, visually, it is based on the Saber Raven, but there are some notable differences, like the rear thruster and wing fins on the tail, like the normal Saber or the base Saber. The wingtips are quite different as well, and the cutouts are filled in and look like they now have intakes. Underneath the ship is where the missile racks are, which are not as restricted as other missile ships, as you can fire a full row of missiles at a time, which look to be about 5 or 6. Now, this Firebird adds another choice alongside the Talon Shrike, and took advantage of the work that was done for the Saber Raven Gold Standard at the same time. Now, personally, I do love that they have brought in a new ship in the same style of the Raven, as so many backers love the Raven, but it's so exclusive, you just can't get it. So having this Firebird means that people can actually have a ship with that aesthetic and enjoy the visuals. Now, next up we have the Ursa Medevac. This is to be used for combined arms, giving ground support while on foot, especially useful now in restricted areas like these distribution centers where flight is not possible. Now, the Medevac will allow the players to not just roll in and rescue others, but they can actually use it as a mobile spawn point, so long as you are within a 20-kilometer range, which is the limitation for a tier 3 bed. Now, as mentioned, they will look into this in terms of balance and make sure that that range is not too punishing or forgiving and sits just right. Also, they will have many other aspects coming out over time to make respawning a little bit more punishing, but this allows this to be a possibility without respawning miles away. Now, the paints, they say, are applicable between either Ursa, and on the interior you have all the medical requirements you could need, like a bed, storage, weapon lockers, med pen holders, and player storage as well. Plus, the rear ramp folds down and extends rather than folds in the middle, which certainly looks a lot nicer and could make bringing players into the vehicle or injured players a lot easier as well. And there is an extra seat as well, just like we see with the Pisces C8R medical version, allowing for an extra medical member to sit down. Now, personally, I was a little unsure how the respawning will impact the game, but the more I hear about it and the punishments coming later down the line with Death of a Spaceman, I am starting to come around to the idea, or maybe just intrigued to see how it works, how it impacts the game, and see what these plans are. But I will certainly be picking up one of these nurses. I think it is a great addition. Anyway, that was Inside Star Citizen. Let's get to Star Citizen Live. So this week's Star Citizen Live was an Invictus all-vehicle Q&A, answering our questions from the ships and vehicle team. Now, they firstly just touched upon what the ship pipeline or the vehicle pipeline is like, and it starts with designers coming up with the briefs of what the vehicle is going to be. Concept artists then take those words and make them into pictures. The vehicle art team make those pictures into 3D objects. Designers and tech artists then set up the vehicles, and then there are upstream teams like gameplay teams to work together for specific vehicle gameplay systems, say like salvaging or mining, as well as many downstream teams like audio, VFX, and so on. So that is a very brief understanding of what the pipeline is. Obviously, during this time there's white box, there's grey box, and so on. But that's the general process. Now, the first question is, how do you decide what ship to make next? Now, with each quarterly patch and the IAE and Invictus Launch Week, they aim to deliver at least one ship for each of these, so 6 in total, but obviously they often create more as well. They then balance the delivery of backlog ships versus fresh new ones, and if they are to do something like a capital ship, then of course that will take a large chunk of time and resources. And then once they've decided, they just fill in the gaps of what they might want, balancing the time and resources available. Now, the vehicle team also needs to cover other work from other gameplay teams, which may require some support, which can often dictate what vehicles are worked on when. So it isn't just a case of the vehicle team decide on every single vehicle they want to work on. Sometimes if there is a feature in development, they may need to go back and help with previous vehicles or include new vehicles to support that gameplay so that when it releases towards in the verse, we have a way of engaging with it. Now, the next question is, right now at this time, what is the priority for the ship teams? Now, this obviously does depend on which vehicle team or department you ask. For example, designers are currently making sure that the functions of the vehicles are working fine, but as an overall priority for the ship teams, it is to deliver the vehicles so players can use the game mechanics in the best way. Next question is wee-woo lights. Is this a priority? So basically, emergency vehicle lighting. And they say they do want more of these types of lights, but with a lot more control over them as well, but they will need to find time to schedule that in. Next question is, why do you choose a new vehicle over a backlog vehicle? And they say most of the time it's just down to size, scope, and gameplay, as the older ships might even need a new concept pass due to how far the pipeline has evolved over the years. But also another aspect could be, for example, that they could spend time building the Starliner, the Genesis Starliner, but they don't have the gameplay yet to support passenger transport, so it would be a waste of time. Which is often why we see new vehicles come along to support the sort of nuances of the gameplay we have now and how that is expanding and becoming a little bit more detailed in various areas. But of course, it is a balancing act to try and get to the backlog as well. Next question, are you now looking to make more variants of older ships? And they say sometimes it becomes an easy win if they are gold standardizing a vehicle to create a variant at the same time, as they do go hand in hand. Variants are also great projects for new starters, so enrolling new members onto the actual ship team, as this can get new staff up to speed with how the process works, which I think is a definite win-win there. And we have seen this with the Firebird. They did mention that while they were doing the Firebird or doing the Saber Raven Gold Standard, they were able to quickly roll out the other variant as well, which I'm assuming was done by a new starter. But again, getting these new starters enrolled into the actual project so that the ship team resources can continue to increase and then they can start rolling out more ships is very important. Next question is, with the first aspects of modularity coming to the Retaliator, is it now the start of seeing modularity roll out to all the other ships, or is it more of a, here have this and we'll apply it to the rest later down the line? Now, they say that there are two parts to modularity. The first is with the MPUV, and how those pods can attach and detach, which they are not there yet. As we can see with this latest tractor version, we're not able to take off the drop pod and swap it for the cargo module or take it off completely. That is not an option yet. But for something like the Retaliator or the Galaxy's pods, where you can take the ship somewhere and swap those bits out, they can do that. So moving forwards, ships that have that feature, and new ships when they roll out as well as older ships, that will be possible, which is great news because this means owners of the Galaxy like myself will be able to have modularity when that ship comes along. But hopefully we're not waiting too long for the MPUV and those various types of ships, or that type of modularity to come along as well. Next question is, what's next for the Retaliator modules? Now, we already know there is a habitation module and a dropship module to come along. They have discussed the possibility of a bounty hunting module with cages, a medical module, not likely things like salvage modules, as they don't want a single ship to be able to do everything. So there is a lot of potential there, and this will continue to expand as more game mechanics come online, but they want it to make sense to the ship itself and the manufacturer or brand. Next question, is there plans to fix ground vehicle physics? Now, they say that the issue is a combination of physics, but also networking. So they are looking into this. There is a lot more they want to do with ground vehicles, like, and I quote, upgrading engines, gearboxes or transmission, wheels, suspension. But the ground vehicles themselves, aside from the wheels and tyre handling, which is their own new bespoke system, is old CryEngine code. So ground vehicles as a whole will eventually need to be reworked, but of course, resources, priorities and so forth will determine when that comes along. And from the sounds of things, it's quite a lot of work to do. Now, I find it really interesting though that he does speak about things like gearboxes and transmission, although I'm not necessarily expecting a manual drive vehicle, although that would be pretty cool. I think having things like racing gearboxes, maybe versus off-roading gearboxes, would be a great option, so you can swap them out for the role that you are engaging in. But ground vehicles in general, I find really cool, and with each new edition, I do love to see the choice of what to use grow, but it will certainly be nice the day when they are converted to do exactly what CIG need them to do, and not using the old system, as they do somewhat feel quite outdated. Plus, as more things come along like weather and radar and scanning gets more further updated, having more of a reason to use ground vehicles will become more apparent as well, so it is quite important. Now the next question is, are ground vehicles a priority in the scope of Star Citizen? And the game is a whole universe, they say. You need to explore space, you need to explore the planets. We as players want both, so it's not that one is more important than the other, they are all equally important. Next question is, did you change the medbed system just to sell more nurses, or Ursa Medivacs? So they say the original intent for medical spawning, or medbed spawning, was to have all medbeds capable of respawning, just with limited ranges. So they are now rolling this out, but like with everything in the verse, they will be tested, they will be balanced to make sure that it all fits. But the death of a spaceman mechanic is coming, it is on its way, and will introduce a whole host of difficulties and challenges and limits to your character should you choose to respawn continuously, like regeneration degradation, costs associated with it of course, and much more. And the more I do hear about this, the more I'm coming around to the idea of at least seeing how this plays out, and what use cases these sorts of ships and vehicles with, tier 3 medbeds and respawning can aid in. Anyway, to finish with, they went through a list of what ships are actively in the pipeline and getting worked on. So they say there are 5 vehicles remaining to release that we saw on that little teaser from last year's CitizenCon, with the exception of the Legionnaire, they say, as they require more support from the gameplay teams, likely I'm guessing for the hacking mechanic, but that is coming later on, but it's still in active development. And other ships in the works include the Zeus ES, which as we know is coming in Alpha 4.0, it is now on the roadmap for 4.0, which is a Q3 release, and they say they are setting new standards with this ship as it looks really, really good. Now the CL will be after the ES, and the Zeus MR will be after that, but they did say that 2 Zeus will come this year, so it sounds like the MR will be a next year release. They are also working on another variant of the Sabre that is coming soon. Also, some other recent releases will be getting variants, but nothing was said there. Now, they are spending a lot of time getting the resource network hooked into the 10 most popular multi-crew ships, which now have the full resource network pass with physical components and so on, and they will get on with the rest of the ships over time, as they all require a lot of work, which will also bring the big change to component sizes for 4.0, as well as supporting other features. So there is a lot of stuff going on for ships and vehicles right now, likely the largest amount of work we have ever seen in one go, as they are rolling out the resource network, things like the fire hazard system, soon it'll be armor and maelstrom, audio is being hooked in more properly now, master modes and all the balancing and tuning that brings. They're also reassessing all of the ship loadouts to make sense with all of this master mode balancing. There will be more interactive interiors, like doors, dashboards, lockers, and so much more. And when you multiply that with all of the flyable ships at this time, this is going to be a huge undertaking that will continue to be tweaked and worked on, which will likely be for another year or two, so do expect things to fluctuate massively while they dial everything in and getting it feeling right. But the good news is they are already well underway with this, and it's just a process that they're going through. Now, the big one coming this year, though, this is the big news of this show, or of the week really, is that the RSI Polaris is set to release at the IAE, or the Intergalactic Aerospace Expo, which is usually around November time. So really amazing to hear that, and looking forward to seeing that one come along, as checking it out in the Invictus Launch Week halls the other day, it is a huge monster, and it is great that that is coming this year. Many will be very happy to hear that. Now, on Inside Star Citizen next week, it will be part 2 of the Invictus Launch Week episodes, and they will be revealing a new concept vehicle, so not a flight-ready one, coming up for DefenseCon, which means it is a new Drake ship, which has got me very excited. But that was a great episode of Star Citizen Live. Very much looking forward to seeing the Polaris come about and flying around for Invictus, and this Drake ship. Ooh, I'm excited to see what that is. Big things are coming for ships and vehicles, which, as I say, is going to take a while to roll out, but they are becoming more and more detailed and will become much more personal to each of us as well. Anyway, let us move on. So also this week, the roadmap brought with it a big reveal of Alpha 4.0, which is expected to release around Q3 this year. So great news to hear that they are still on track for 4.0 coming this year. Be sure to check out my dedicated roadmap update video to learn more about what is coming, but I am very happy for that update. Now, there was also a whitelist guide taking a closer look at the Hercules, and with the release of the Argo MPUV Tractor and Ursa Medivac, they provided Q&As to answer all of our questions, plus a post for each day during the Invictus Launch Week event. And finally, today is the last day to pick up the TOBII Tracker 5 at 15% off, which is a great time to pick one up, and using the link in the description will take you to that deal, as paying full price is certainly not necessary. Although at the time of recording this, there is only an hour and a half remaining for this deal, so it might be over already, but fear not, there will be another sale soon, I'm sure, at which point I will be sure to let you all know. Big thank you to all of you who have used my link or code, as it does directly support my channel. So that brings us to the end of the show. If you do enjoy my content, please consider subscribing and hitting that like button. Also, I am able to do this thanks to my very generous patrons and channel members. If you appreciate what I do and would like to help make it even better from as little as $1 a month, all of the links are provided below.